All right, we are recording. Welcome everyone to the Freddie and Alyssa show. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that fun YouTube stuff. If you're watching on Facebook, follow the page. And if you're listening on a platform like iTunes and you want to leave us a 5-star review because you think we deserve it, that would be amazing. We've been putting up content now for almost 4 years, and we're having a blast, and we couldn't be doing this without all of your support. So thank you for tuning in every single Wednesday. I don't know if the mic is picking it up, but there are horrendous winds happening right now in Florida. I don't think I've heard wind like this in a very long time.
No.
It's swooshing through the hallways.
But it's not raining.
No.
Thank goodness.
Well, thank goodness, because that would be even more of a mess. But we got an email from our apartment building about, putting everything away just because there was a potential hurricane that has since been downgraded to a tropical storm. But
Elsa.
I believe it's going to be west of us. But right now it's oddly sunny, but there's just a lot of wind.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when it comes to hurricanes because you just never know. At the very last second, it can go the other way, and you're kind of just sitting on your toes every single day. So we will see what happens, but we do have some big gusts of wind going through the hallway.
Yeah, but so far so good. So we're going to hop into that in a second. But do you want to take today's sponsor before we get into the episode?
Oh, do I get to do the sponsor today?
You get to do it. You get to do it. I think I set the bar pretty high last week.
You did. No pressure at all. So let's do this. All right, give me a drum roll, please. Yeah. All right, guys. Today's episode of the Freddie and Alyssa show is brought to you by HarperCollins with the Lost and Found Bookshop by Susan Wiggs. If you are looking for that perfect feel-good summer read, look no further. We've got you covered with the Lost and Found Bookshop. You can sit back, you can relax, and you can enjoy this bestseller. So the premise of this book, if you haven't heard about it yet, it is all about a woman named Natalie Harper. And after her mother's death, she inherits a charming but financially strapped bookshop in San Francisco. And she also becomes the caretaker for her ailing grandfather. And books provide welcome solace for her grief and her struggle. People magazine calls the book a feel-good family saga, a charming tale about the silver linings of unwanted detours. This read is perfect for readers of Jennifer Weiner or Emily Henry. So, whether it's your top pick for maybe a book club or you're just looking to enjoy a nice read poolside, on the beach, on vacay, in a hurricane, whatever you're doing, the Lost and Found Bookshop is it. So if you want to grab your copy, you can head on over to harpercollins.com. That is HARPER Collins.com and grab your copy of the Lost and Found Bookshop by Susan Wiggs. What do you rate?
Oh, I give it an A+. I give it an A+. I gotta say, I've never, not growing up in Florida, I've never really understood hurricanes. The first time I actually heard that a hurricane might be coming was from my cousin Cherie, who had planned a vacation with her family to get an Airbnb, come to Disney, enjoy now that the world's opened up a little bit, and she was thinking about potentially canceling her trip when she heard it was a hurricane. You grew up in South Florida. I grew up in Ohio, so the only thing we ever had was severe thunderstorms and potentially tornado warnings every now and then. Little earthquakes was never a big deal. A hurricane
in Ohio?
Yeah, just we've had a few earthquakes, but nothing like what we're afraid of in California. But that's more how I grew up now in my 20s. Was California was the earthquake, and we were always worried about that. But what was it like with hurricanes? So what does that all consist of? At least hurricanes seem to give you warning.
Yes.
Which is unlike any other natural disaster.
Well, what's so crazy is growing up in South Florida, we were way closer to the coast. So when you hear hurricanes coming, you're kind of like, uh-oh. I mean, I know anywhere in Florida, but in Orlando, we're more central. So once the hurricane hits, it kind of weakens it a little bit. Not to say that a lot of damage can't happen, because it absolutely can. But living right on the coast, you're just like, oh goodness, if this is coming here, we got to get out. But what's interesting is back in the day, because there was no technology of social media, of me being able to quickly Google where is the hurricane at right now, my dad had this laminated tracker that he would keep in the garage.
A laminated tracker?
Yeah, so basically it was like Florida, the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and he would, with a marker, like every, couple hours or day, like draw this on this tracker where the hurricane was supposed to go so he could see the different paths that it might take. Isn't that so Rick Tabbit?
Yeah, I mean, that's smart, though, for the family. Because don't you have, like, shutters and you had to do certain things? Or...
Yes, so if it's a certain category, you have to put shutters up because, you want to stay safe. You absolutely should, or else your windows
So glass could be blown out.
Correct,
oh,
absolutely. Wow. And then, if it was a specific category, you would evacuate, and sometimes they'll have the evacuation alert saying, like, you should evacuate, your state will let you know. But it's kind of like a waiting game. So even with Tropical Storm Elsa, at least I was. I made you go and get water yesterday. I was like, let's prep. You just never know. It could, things could change at the last second. But a lot of my memories growing up with hurricanes, we would stay in the house a lot of times with shutters if it wasn't, that bad. There are other times you evacuate. Being in a hurricane itself, it's not the most fun, but for me, because I've done it, it's like the rain doesn't really bother me. Thunderstorms, I'm kind of like, it's fine. Worst case scenario, you go into the closet, you hide in the house. I remember when I was younger, my parents and a lot of my friends would have, hurricane parties. So if you're a true Floridian and you've never seen ice in a bathtub to keep your drinks cold, you haven't lived. That was like more something my friends did. But it's a lot. It was like just kind of a crazy time growing up in that. And then I moved to California. And earthquakes, to this day, terrify me.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when it's going to hit. And the very last one that we were in, it woke us up in the middle of the night. Do you remember?
A little bit.
It was on my birthday.
It shook pretty big, yeah.
It was on my July 30th. I will never forget. We woke up, it's like 5:30 in the morning, and our chandelier in our bedroom was shaking back and forth. And I was like, uh-oh. And as a person living in California, you keep hearing all the time, oh, the next one's going to be the big one. And you're just like, I don't know. It's a little more stressful because with a hurricane, you can plan. With an earthquake, you can't. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying hurricanes are fun by any means, but
you're making the best out of the situation, and it's nice to be connected and to be able to figure out if there was anything bad going to happen so we could, make a plan.
Because a lot of times, a lot of bad does happen with hurricanes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've lived through a couple of them where our towns were just completely like ruined, and you go on the curfew every single night, and then like sometimes school for weeks, it was all canceled. So I've seen all of it. I'm not saying that like, oh yeah, it's a fun thing, but
well, no, just making the best out of it. But luckily, this one never really, happened. So we're still keeping an eye on it. But for us, I think it's hitting Tampa a little more than it is Orlando here. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on it. But it has been pretty rainy for Florida. I don't know if it had something to do with that. But today the sun is shining. We do have the wind. So we're just looking forward to the sunshine coming back out to enjoy the summer, because we were on like this huge kick of just traveling and going places. We wanted to get settled. I think we've talked about this on the podcast a few times, of having this new idea that we wanted to work on. And the thing that was just holding us back is that we had a million things going on. We wanted to make sure that we stayed consistent with our podcast, and that we had our, our life duties of cleaning and grocery shopping and bills, and on top of moving and Alyssa's real estate. We had so much going on. But then we finally got settled, and just about 4 days ago, we started a new show that we have been so excited to do for months and months and months. And it has been slightly postponed because it has been raining. And what we are going to do, and we hope it'll be ready by August for the first episode, but we're going to call it Exploring Florida. Again, we're very creative with our titles. First, the Freddie and Alyssa Show. We were kind of like, well, what is the show? We're like, well, it's Freddie and Alyssa talking. Let's call it the Freddie and Alyssa Show. And then Exploring Florida. What are we doing? Well, we're exploring Florida.
Hey.
And we want to document this amazing state because I think there's unique cities and activities in each and every state in our country. Florida is unique in the sense of it being tropical, of having different beaches, and having a big city like Miami, but then Disney World, and then the West Coast and Central Florida. So we want to explore it. Number one, we want to be more filled in on the information of the cities and try to catch up, because Alyssa knows a lot about South Florida. I don't really know much about Florida, and being in real estate with her being the agent and me working on behind the scenes, I think having information on cities, areas, activities, it just allows you to connect with people. Yeah. And I really want to study and learn these different cities. And at the same time, it's fun because we've been locked up for 15 months. Yeah. I just want to get in the car. I want to take the camera. I want to bring all of you on this journey and just check out some really cool places, because Florida, I would say, is a very vacation-heavy destination for people in America, especially Walt Disney, but Destin, Florida, Miami, Sarasota, Naples, Fort Myers, the list goes on, West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, and then you've got the Caribbean. There's just so many different ways. Florida Keys. So we're making a huge list. We want to find some great hotels. We want to find some unique Airbnbs, and we want to put ourselves out there and try new things. One of the things on our list is
trying new food. You said you're going to try avocado and shellfish?
I'm not going to do that. This is exploring Florida in a happy way, not exploring different emergency or urgent care
You're not
lobbies.
Allergic. He's not allergic.
And so what we're going to try to do is find the most interesting activities. So for those of you who are interested in trying those activities in your state, or if you're ever visiting Florida, we're going to really look around and try to find some amazing things. So the one thing that we've already done is at Disney Springs, we were on this big hot air balloon. But it was connected to a cable. So that's a way to just start, but there are legit hot air balloon rides here in Florida that we have on the list. We've got an airboat ride on the list, boat tours. We've got indoor skiing, axe throwing. There's this huge lagoon that was built in this city called Wesley Chapel. We've got the city of Miami, all the great food in this entire state. So for any of you who've been to Florida or who live in Florida or who are curious about Florida, we would love for you to make suggestions for us, because we can only Google so much. So we're reaching out to you. Let us know where you'd like us to go, things you'd like us to try, and we're going to try to create a series out of this and at least do one episode a week. I'm going to be pushing her to do a little bit more than one episode a week. But so far, it's been going really well, minus the 3-day pause because the rain. It just doesn't look that fun if it's cloudy and rainy and you're trying to tell someone how beautiful it is. In the middle of a hurricane or a tropical storm.
Right, that too. And what's really interesting as well, where we live in Orlando, there are so many subdivisions and different towns to explore that there's so much already around us. Like for one of the episodes, we obviously did the air balloon. I think it's called Aerophile, if that's how you pronounce it, in Disney Springs, which was really awesome, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
But we wanted to do that activity because we also want to explore Celebration, which, I've gone to quite a handful of times, and I adore this town. It was, Disney was the one who came up with it, thought of it, and obviously all these years later it finally got built. But what I really like too on this end of it is researching and learning about all these places, because I learned so much about Celebration and Walt Disney and what he originally wanted, which obviously it didn't happen because 30 years after he passed is when they made Celebration. But he had this whole vision for this town to be in a dome so that they could control the climate. And I was like, what a innovative visionary to think of that in the 60s. It still hasn't happened, but in Florida, we do have the humidity, we do have the rain. So he was probably just thinking, outside of the box. And he also back then too was talking about electric cars going underneath the town so that all of the residents could actually walk through the town and not worry about getting hit, just all these different things. So, me, I love absorbing new information and learning just different things in history about these different areas that are just right here around us.
Yeah. Well, we have that incentive now. And I just always love being able to retain more information, and because that's what one of the things we wrote in our book years ago one of my favorite chapters still to this day was titled "Be Nice, Ask Questions," and I felt like that was the most simple way to sum up how I have viewed life and how I always give advice. Is I just feel like if you never know what to do, or you want to set out to do something specific, it is to just be nice and ask questions. And I think there's a lot of humility wrapped up in that. I think being kind and being nice, but the most important thing on top of being kind, nice, and humble is to ask questions, to be interested in other people's lives, to be interested in things that we can learn. And that's where I have really found my core happiness, is by having something that I sit down, being productive, and then learning something new. Because you wake up the next day and you're like, I really made something out of that day. Yep. So this kind of goes with our entire theory. So we're going to really explore. We're going to take you on the journey. It's going to be called Exploring Florida. Woo! And we're going to try a lot of crazy stuff, because there's so many things like zip lining I've never done. So the list goes on. Probably like some canoeing with these clear boats in this gator place. So that's going to be really interesting. But yeah, so please let us know your suggestions.
Let us know your suggestions. And also, even going on that air balloon, we would have never ever done that before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, even for us, it made us kind of get out of our comfort zone. Because for me, I'm not the biggest fan of heights. But I said, you know what, Alyssa? Like, just do it. Just push yourself. And I did it. It was really fun and it was really cool.
Yeah, it wasn't that scary. So we have to get you on something a little more scary.
No.
The weather didn't allow it to go to 400 feet. It only went to 100 feet, which is fine. I think I've jumped off of a lighthouse from 50 feet into the Lake Erie before. So it wasn't that much more. But heights doesn't really bother me. I know it does her.
Yeah.
But so we're getting out there. We also we got to spend some time at Cocoa Beach, which was gorgeous. The experience was amazing, because we're used to Los Angeles beaches, which are still about an hour away because we're in Orlando. And but you just had parking, you just walk on the beach. It was awesome. But my cousin is in town, and I got to meet my goddaughter Harlow. I got to see my niece Mila, and we got to hang out with the family, and it was just so amazing being around these little ones. Mila's 3, Harlow's 1. And I haven't really been around kids my entire adult life. I don't think you have either, because we've both been in Los Angeles.
Niece, but yeah,
and
smaller.
But I'm saying on a consistent basis, like being around kids, because when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, I grew up with my cousins being young, but you're not thinking about little kids developing and finding them interesting. You're in your own head thinking about your driver's license and dating when you're 16 years old. Right. So now that I'm an adult and I'm interested in everything going on, it's the 2 girls that I was able to see was Sydney and Harper, who played my daughters on the show. So I got to see them grow up from 6 months to 7 years old, and that was kind of like how to hold babies, how to and how to interact. There was even times on the show where I would ask, how do you speak to a 5-year-old? Like, do you not that you're talking down to them, but how sometimes you go, oh, oh, are you gonna whatever this is? Do you talk to them like an adult, or do you bring your voice down? Because all I could do was watch movies or TV shows, so I was never really around children to understand what to do. So I just kind of sit back. I was watching my cousin parent, and Jeremy, her husband, just parent the kids and have so much fun. But what was your experience of being around the little ones and everything?
It was so sweet and precious. And it's so funny to see the different ages, because like you said, we haven't really been around, kids in a long time. And so being able to have Jules, my sister's daughter, my niece, to watch that, and then now to see, because Mila is 3 and Harlow is 1. Correct?
Yes.
So it's interesting to see them in these different ages, because Harlow, she's 1, and, she's now walking, and she's so excited, and every little thing she's looking at me, and she wants to explore, and she looks deep in your soul.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's stuff she knows that she can't tell us.
Yeah, there's some definite eye connection there. You're like, what do you know in those beautiful blue eyes? I think it's probably all 1-year-olds. I think there's that whole theory of is this your rebirth? Do you know everything and you're yet to forget it? or whatever it is. But I'm saying when you look, I've never like
I know.
it's not a 1-year-old. It is there's life in that
There's
soul.
life in that soul. And she was just having just the best time, and just watching her walk around, and like how happy she was when I give her like a goldfish, and then she just wants to go up on the chair and stand, and then she gets so excited sitting down and then standing up, and she just loved everything. And then Mila, the 3-year-old, she was making me work for it.
Oh yeah.
I was hanging out with her by the water, and I was trying to like ask her some questions, and she just like knew. It's funny it made me think about when you mentioned bringing your voice up, because I was doing that with her at first, and I was like, well, let me just like kind of start talking to her normal, just asking her questions, and that's kind of when she like was vibing with me.
So she didn't want to be talked to like a kid.
Yeah, she's like, speak to me as the mature young lady that I am.
I guess so. It's just a learning experience.
It is. And then it's interesting too, because kids, they're on a schedule of nap time. So when we were at the beach, they both were supposed to have their naps, and Mila, she ended up sleeping right there on the towel under the umbrella. Like, she was so tired, and she just completely knocked out for a couple hours, and then Harlow ended up napping for maybe like 20-30 minutes. But it's so interesting to watch, and I think it's so cool that these two sisters have each other, and they're growing up together, and they're just such dolls. They are the cutest kids, and I can't believe how big Mila is.
I know. Yeah, that's why I can't wait to see. I can't wait. They're here a couple more days, so we're gonna get to spend some time, and then we're trying to just figure out ways to just spend more time with the family, because there's just something so just that feels so good, just being around family and spending that time. So we've had more family here in the past 3 months than we have in entire 15 years.
Wow.
So it's just such a beautiful thing. So for anybody too who not that you take your family for granted, but you definitely are just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to grandma's for dinner, and like it just becomes normal. When it's taken away for some time, you don't realize how great it really is. Yeah. And so I always keep that perspective of just making sure to do the phone calls and really spending the time and putting in the effort, because we know what it's like to be away from them and to miss all those moments. Yeah. And, the first year of Harlow's life, I was never even privy to other than photos. Same thing with Mila, like even Juliana, like we haven't spent that much time. Yeah. And I just can't wait to be able to spend that quality time. And when they get older, they're going to remember more, and it's going to be great. But you can't help but start thinking about our future and kids. And so I was talking with my cousin about that, and I feel like every mom and dad has the same answer, where it's just like, it's a love you've never felt, but it's also the hardest thing you've ever done. Mm-hmm. And you can see that because, it's just a constant it's a constant attention and focus that goes into the children at every single minute they're awake. And my cousin was saying that even when she gets her hour at night, she can't really
exhausted.
Yeah, probably. She's like, I watch a little TV, but I'm just like, I got to get to bed because I have to do this all over again the next day. So we were just having like a really good conversation about that, and it's just weird how that is one area of our life that so many people can connect on, but we have no idea.
No clue.
What it's like. And anytime you bring up, well, we have Benji, and when we bring him in the stroller, boy, is it more difficult. But it is, there's the
it's its own level of, responsibility.
But the responsibility is that you're like taking care of something, but
it's not, he's not going to get hurt. Him. He fell over.
Like, he's not going to choke. He's not going to get washed up. He's not going to, he's very simple. And then, like, now he's just passed out like the king he is. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be a moment. And I think maybe everybody has, like, I don't know. We're just new. Like, I've never been 33 years old and married before and going like, oh, yeah, like, we're talking about kids and like, when do we do it? And then plus all the thoughts that go on with it.
Of course. I mean, it is probably one of the biggest things you'll ever do in your life. And I feel like every person I've ever talked to about this has always said there's never the right time, but you just do it. And we've always talked about this too. I feel like, especially for me, when we're older, having that family is just so so important. You know what I mean? Like that's real, like, because I am always thinking about the future and always making choices based on the future. And last year I went to my gynecologist and I got all the tests done to see how my eggs were and everything was good, you know, for my age, of course, but everything looked healthy and normal. So it's just interesting that with life, we really do have that biological clock ticking, because if we didn't have that, I feel like you and I would wait quite some time, just because there's a lot of stuff we're doing. We always have been like that, though. You know, like I even remember in my 20s at one point, I was like, I don't really know if I would have kids. That literally was a thought in my early to mid 20s. That obviously changed. I very much want a family, and I want to have a family with this guy and see what we could create. I mean, that's just the coolest thing, and to be able to raise it and, you know, to have that family and have those core values together. But it is life changing, you know, so we'll see what happens.
It is, yeah. I think the unique thing about us is that, you know, even though we're 33, soon to be 34, she's older than I am. I always like to let people know that. I think by this time, traditionally people have figured out at least a little bit of a routine in life.
Sure.
And if you think about you and I, it's just always been a year-to-year type of living. Like the reason when you're 24 years old, you're in Los Angeles, you don't know when your next job's going to come, and you're kind of thinking in your head, well, how am I going to afford to have a kid? How can I barely have enough time to spend time with my family, my friends, plus my career. Like, how do you add in a child? And realistically, the only thing that has changed is our knowledge as growing up. But if you think about it, I mean, we just moved to Florida. We're just starting a new career. Yeah. It kind of feels like we're 22. So that's the only thing, is just really trying to figure out, like, of monitoring it and trying to, in my mind, I want to do it, but we have to just find the right time of like, basically how far can we push it out,
right,
just to get into a groove.
Well, because in my perfect world, there are a lot of things that, like you said, new career, new place that we're living, new community, just everything, new schedule. It'd be really nice to get into the groove of that and just have things rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, like this is the time. And who knows? Maybe that time will never come and we'll just do it when we do it. Like, I don't know. But I really do believe that once we are a little bit more in the groove of our life and, you know, have a surefire path of where we're going, that would make it easier. But
yeah, it's just the exchange of you're going to I mean, I guess for me it's just like where do you sacrifice the time of, you know, because of course we'd be able to do it, we would be fine if it was happening. We would go, yeah, like, of course, there's no right time.
So happy,
you could do it. But you know, it's just like, well, like there's so many days we go to bed with a list of to-do things that we never, like, we chip away at 10% of it every day, it seems like, it, you know, and then you add in a full-time job, and then that changes your whole life, and then the family dynamics of it all too. Like, it's going to be
it's an adjustment. Everything in life is, but you know.
But just watching the little girls, though, it's like the love, even though they're not mine, the love is there.
I know.
Like I love them equally as much as I do Cherie and Jeremy.
I know.
Like it's almost like their kids you love the same as them.
Well, what's really cool though is that as two individuals, you love them so much, and then they created these little humans. It's like. And they're like these little nuggets, and you just love them so much. It's just so interesting. And I know that one day it definitely will happen, and we'll be very excited to do so. But, you know, we'll see. Like, what's meant to be will be. I always say that. Trust in the timing of life. If it's meant to happen tomorrow, but we are pretty careful, though. So,
well, and also, too, you're basically just choosing which... whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know because I don't have a kid.
10 years?
Of the sacrifice you basically have to give up a huge portion of your life to raise your child early, and then you get to kick back later. So I was even telling my cousin that right now they're fully consumed with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. But by the time they're like 45 or 50, they're going to be more like, oh, the kids are grown. I'm kicked back and now I'm got my freedom.
You know,
and then for us, we're going to be probably with like,
ones.
yeah, like no matter when it is.
When you don't have the energy.
Yeah.
Come on, kids. Come
no,
back.
we will. I'm not going to overthink this too much.
You're not going to overthink, yeah, right.
But
yeah,
anywho,
right.
It was just interesting. It just comes up, you know, we've just been thinking about it a lot lately.
Of course.
And so, yeah. Just something to think about.
I saw a TikTok the other day, and it was of this couple, and they were in their 40s, and they go, yeah, when we were young and had kids young, everyone was like, oh, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. You can't do that. And they're like, we did it. And now we're in our 40s, and they're just
and
chilling.
the kids are grown, so they get to have these grown-ass kids
yeah.
and enjoy, and they're in their 40s.
Yeah.
So it's just the time. But it's going to be a wonderful time, and so there will be a time. But until then, we're just going to focus on being grade A aunts and uncles.
Also, when it does happen, do you guys think we will have a boy or a girl? I want to know. We'll see.
We already know what it'll be,
but no,
it's but yeah, it'll be really interesting. But yeah, I think we just keep looking into, you know, all the things that should be looked into. Anyway, on other news, you know, you can drink beer on the beach in Florida. That was pretty cool.
Yes, you can.
That's
well, it's funny because we went up to this. There was a restaurant/bar, and it was right on the beach. And we're like, oh goodness, we need a bathroom really bad. Right when we got there, and you were asking, you're like, well, if we order it, can we bring it to the beach? She's like, yeah. We were like, what?
Yeah, you can't do that in LA.
You have to hide it in your bag in LA and like make sure there's no patrol around.
That's what's hilarious, is that people would just put it in anything.
Yeah, like water bottle.
You just put
a beer in a cup, and then you
just gotta fake. You just gotta fake it. You're just like this, like, oh, I'm so parched, and then you pretend it doesn't like taste like vodka. There was this young group of kids, and I think they were maybe like, I don't even know anymore. Like, I don't know when all of a sudden 16 it like has looked. I was like, wait, what? Because when I was 16, I was thinking of like how I thought of myself, and then when you see a 16-year-old in real life, you're just like they're actual children. Yeah. And I was just the man at 16, and then you look at these children. But they were doing the Instagram stuff, and they were taking pictures and doing all this, and I was like, oh, that's what we look like to the public when we're doing take after take, and people are like, oh, these kids. But they sat down, and I was watching the guy sip his water, and I was looking. I was like, is he gonna make a face? Is that water or vodka?
He make a face?
It was water. They probably aren't hooligans like I was growing up. They're probably 16 and hasn't even thought about alcohol yet. But that's just, it was just super interesting. But I was like staring at that kid. I'm like, what are you drinking in there? And I was like, oh, that went down pretty refreshing. Because this is a vodka sip. If you're just like, it's a little sip like that. If you go,
that's water.
That's water because you're parched. But the quick little sip, I'm like, I'm onto you. I invented that.
Oh, you invented it. And then what was so crazy too at the beach, I ran into a friend of mine. She and I met in a class online virtually in Florida, but she was living in California, and she just moved here literally like 5 days ago. And we had been saying, oh, we want to get together. And she texted me and she goes, I saw your stories. I've never been to Cocoa Beach, but I'm here with my friend. She's in town. And I was like, well, text me when you get situated, we'll come and see you. And what do you know, we're kind of packing stuff up, getting ready to leave soon. And all of a sudden, I hear someone scream my name. And I look over, and she was literally right there on the beach. I mean, this beach was huge. It was so crowded and packed. The odds that she was right there and she saw me, and we're like, this is just so crazy. So
yeah, the energy of the world is something that you can try to fight it, but it's there. That is what life's about. I even saw someone else talking about this, that you're basically, and this is if you believe this, but that you're here to learn how to manipulate energy. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that, because there's something so real, and it's like if you're late for something, you get every red light. Yeah. If you're on time, or if you're like early, you get every green light. Like, there's something that you attract. When you're in a good place, good things happen. When you're in a dark place, dark things happen. And it's just figuring out how to work this energy. But there are certain days that like everything comes through at the same time. Emails come through, job opportunities come through, and you're just like, for 4 days it was silent.
Quiet. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get these 4 opportunities all within an hour of each other, and you're like, how, like, what is that?
Well, and I even noticed too, for me, when it comes to brand collaborations, I always get these emails and opportunities in bulk. When it comes to real estate, it doesn't matter how many different properties I'm working on. It's always the same day that everyone is calling me. That happened this morning. I mean, I got calls from every single person. I was like, it's been quiet for 2 weeks, you know? What's been going on? And it just cracks me up because I'm like, what are the odds of that? It's energy.
It is, and I think that because we started exploring Florida and started getting out there, just the amount of people that are just now like coming into our lives, and just so it's. I know this all sounds like arbitrary, but it's for me. I can't remember if I said this on the members podcast or last Wednesday, but I didn't realize just how much the quarantine and being isolated like messed with me. Like, I need people, and we used to make the joke that I was a wet blanket, because I kind of was a wet blanket, but I didn't realize that I wasn't as wet of a blanket as I thought I was, because, I didn't always go do things, because I do like being home and doing my own thing, but when you take away all of it, you're missing out on a key component of being a human being, like exploring new things. And for me, that's what has always been a dream of mine when it comes to creating content, is that there are people who can make a living creating content by doing traveling and eating. And that's like my 2 favorite things. And I said, if you can somehow do this around a business, that's kind of the perfect marriage
mix,
because you're genuinely excited. And I feel like we've lived like kind of adventurous lives, and we've done a lot of really cool things in our life. And that kind of sets a bar of your standard of being, your mind blown, or to have actual fun, or to have that waking up in the morning and that vacation feel. Anyone who's been on a vacation, the moment you get off that airplane, or the moment you get into your hotel room, or you sit down for your first drink, there's that, or you're going like tubing, or you're going Paris, like when you're there's something inside you that makes you feel like a kid again. That only really comes through traveling. At least with 100%. me. So that's why we're really trying to also figure this out, because when you go to a new place, like I've never been to Naples, Florida. So the moment we go to Naples and you go to the beach, or you try this Naples thing, whatever that is, once we research it, you're going to get hit with that Christmas morning, that youthful, like, this is new. And it's just very exciting. That's what I loved about Cocoa Beach, and just being out and really stopping and smelling the roses.
Look at my guy. I honestly think you just went through a wet blanket phase for a few years during a time when you just really had like the same schedule every single day. There really wasn't much, you know what I mean? It was just for a couple years, and then the pandemic really got you out of it, which I'm sure it did with a lot of people, because you never realize how much you love that human connection, or just like being out somewhere, not worrying. It just, I don't know. It almost, if you have to look at silver linings, maybe it just really opened people's eyes and shifted perspectives of, the big grand scheme of things. It's really about humans and connecting and having community and just exploring and living life and doing what makes you happy, no matter what that is. Maybe you love to stay home, you know what I mean? And you're like, hey, I'm gonna do this forever.
Some do, but I think we sometimes get lost in it. I think the reason I did is just that 2018, 19, and 20 were kind of hard. Were kind of like hard years. Like kind of like underneath.
Sure.
Of just like working through stuff. So I felt like maybe being in large groups all the time, or hanging out, that you kind of had to bring your A game and your energy that at that point I just didn't have extra of. It was kind of like I had just enough to do my duties of working and being together, but I just think I was like working through stuff that I just didn't have that leftover energy to give. And I think that's why a lot of people too like staying home, is maybe we just got to work through stuff. But as soon as I like lifted out of that and kind of had this rebirth of getting back out there and and getting in new routines and keeping the house clean and making the bed and hitting the gym. Losing weight is always a weight off, like, not, no pun intended, but a weight off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
When I feel I look better, like, because there's people who've been so kind, even during my like 20-30 pound weight fluctuations over the years. And I know I'm hard on myself because I know I've never gotten to a point that like where I felt too overweight,
Right.
but enough that I wasn't happy with myself. And even though people were kind and they're like, oh my gosh, you look amazing, like you're crazy, like you don't need to lose weight.
Right.
But for me personally, I know the weight, where the clothes, the way I move, the way I feel, is where I'm most confident. So I think even being like 20-30 pounds overweight on and off the past few years was also weighing on me. And I'm now like a month in and I can see the changes starting to happen. So I'm just consciously making better decisions of keeping my house clean, doing the routines, and making sure that I do it even when I don't feel like it. And I think that's one of the best quotes I ever heard. The best piece of advice is that I'll be so in it for 5-6 days, and then the 7th day I'm just not in the mood. But if you force yourself to always do it, it just becomes a habit. Because thinking as a kid,
do it now.
As a kid, you had to be told to brush your teeth, or you never would have. But you were told so many times that it just became a habit that you brush your teeth at night.
Yeah.
But there was a time that you didn't want to do it. So it's like, even if it's like making your bed or going to the gym or whatever it may be, I've just been telling myself, like, anytime my mind goes, don't, I go, no. Like, I'm on this new path where I have to just do what I said I was going to do. And it's just all coming together.
It's life-changing. It really is. I remember, I think it was back in 2016 when I first started doing this. And I would sit and write on page after page after page, do it now, do it now, do it now, so that it would go into my brain. And that mindset shifted anytime I would think to do something. If I go, oh, I should make my bed, I'd hear do it now in my head, and I go do it. Or the same type of notion, if I get a bill in my hand, the first time it touches your hand, just handle it. You're going to save so much more time by doing it now and doing it the second you hold it in your hand than throwing it, in the drawer, and then you see it a couple days later and then you're like, oh, should I do this now? And then you put it back down. You just waste so much time. So those are things that for a very long time I've always practiced, and it just changes your mindset. It changes the way you live, the way you do things. Yeah. And it's just an overall like more positive experience, I'd say. Yeah, and it just snowballs. So I just all of it, I can always tell when things are going really well, because I end up getting like a happy anxiety where I'm aware things are so good, and I end up going like, well, wait a minute, like, what's the problem I'm solving? Like, what's the issue? Like, there's even times that I'll even tell you where I'm like sitting there now and you're like, what? And I was like, I don't know, something was bothering me, but I forgot what I was upset about. Yeah. So it's like so for me, maybe that's just how my brain works, where it has to find a problem or challenge to overcome. Right. So if I'm not being productive, I will almost create issues that aren't there. But if you say, no, you're going to go in and film a video about Disney Springs, or you're going to go do this podcast, or you're going to go edit, I have all these problems to solve. And so I'm like, okay, and I'm focused on it. When I was moving those 3 days, because I was so focused on solving a problem and finishing this task, that you don't have time to sit around and create problems. So that was kind of the last step for me of like moving, getting settled, and then and being active again, but having a task at hand that was physical. And it just kind of allowed me just to relax, to burn off that energy that I have. I've been going to bed early, which is so cool. I went to bed at like 10:15 the other night, woke up at 7. Like, it's good. We're making positive adjustments, and I just want to stay on this path. We will, but you really do thrive when you're working and you have a task at hand. Oh my God, speaking of tasks, do you remember the handyman we met at my mom's? Yes. He was amazing. He was there with his daughter. Well, so my mom needed, a bunch of stuff handled in the house, and she hired this awesome guy, and he was telling her that during the pandemic, he was able to get a job at 7-Eleven, and it was in Windermere. And you know who lives in Windermere? Who? Shaq.
Oh, he still does?
Yeah, he still lives there.
Oh, okay.
And so during this time, I guess Shaq is like a big motorcycle guy, and he's got like this big crew. And so like all the time he'd roll through on his bike, and he was just so, had such synergy with this guy. They just really got along, and it was just really cool. And obviously this guy was really probably awesome with him not being like, oh, it's a celebrity. It's just like a person. They're just like kicking it. So one day Shaq comes in and goes, hey man, is that your bike out front? And he's like, actually it is, because he rides too. And Shaq's like, well, you know, tomorrow we're going out. You should come with us. And so now he's part of this bike gang with Shaq, and they're like boys. And it's just crazy. I love stories like that because it just shows me that people in Florida are like cool. You know what I mean? Like Shaq's just like, come on, man. Now he's part of the bike gang.
So Exploring Florida episode 12 will be finding Shaq's bike gang.
In Windermere, Florida.
Yeah, I knew he had that big house in Windermere, but I thought he sold it.
Well, apparently it's like not selling. So many different realtors have tried to put on the market, but it's such a specific house. I mean, it's so tall because he had it specifically made for him, you know? And it's also a really, really big house and very, very pricey. So
he'll have to dump it one day.
Yeah.
Or another maybe 7'9" person will buy it with $80 million or whatever it is.
Isn't Shaq the one who won't give his money to the kids unless they went to college or something like that?
And have 2 degrees.
I love that. That's me making them work and learn.
Even
grow.
Steve Harvey had a good bit about that with his kids, is that he like, I think he said something like he has like 5% that he's going to help like with the kids, but he goes, this is my money and I'm going to give it to the people I want to. And it's like, it's up to the kids, because that's what you basically have to do. And yet again, we don't know what it's like to have kids and have millions of dollars to, you know, but the best thing to do is to teach them the skills so they can acquire their own wealth and their own path. Because we've realized, as much as we've hated the bumps in the road and then having to dig your way out is why we are who we are today.
Yep.
If we just had money to solve the problem, we would still be the same people we were in 2013.
Yep.
Because you can only learn so much, but it's when you're down and you climb out is where you start to grow as a person. And sometimes if you have just money to throw at the problem, you miss that growing opportunity, which ultimately will, you know, but I'm not casting judgment on it. I'm just saying there's a few people that's how we'll do it.
Absolutely.
Like we're going to, you know, I would never just give, because as much as I've always said in our life, I was like, if we just had like just a little cash right now, like we could make this project go. Like Unplugged, like if we just had our own cash, like we would make it. It would be a good film. Like there's so, but we're not ready for it. Like
that's exactly it.
If you had the money, then you wouldn't become the person you need to be to get the money to make it happen. Right. So sometimes it's just being, you know, going through. It's easier said than done because I'm in a good place now. So it's easy to say, but during the years of the ups and downs, and I think too, I love bringing it up a little bit because I think a lot of people will assume just, you know, because I've worked on a show or whatever it may be, that maybe life was easier than what I've shared, but there's definitely a lot of challenges that we have overcome together.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of goes into with who we are today. Yeah, I think that's the best compliment we ever get is when people are like, you guys just seem like just so normal. And it's like, well, we've gotten humbled so much that any sort of ego we had early in our 20s was just chipped away at. And we got back to our roots, because when you just have those roadblocks and huge challenges, it just reminds you that, you know, it doesn't matter what you do or who you know, it's all about like what you can do for other people and how you can be selfless.
Yep.
And I think that's a big continuing to learn that, of just how to always be selfless, be selfish when you need to. But there's like a balance with that. But I don't remember how we got on that topic. But do you want to, before we wrap up, because I know we have to go, do you just want to do a quick little update on the Britney Spears thing?
Quick update on Britney Spears, because there's so much going on right now. Her team is leaving left and right. First off, we have her longtime manager.
And then real quick, just in case someone didn't see this, can you give like a 30-second recap before this of what originally is going on?
Yes, so Britney was in a conservatorship for 13 years, where basically her father was in charge of everything, but pretty much she came out and said that he was abusing the power. She wants out. She wasn't even able to hire her own lawyer in 2008. So she's had the same lawyer for 13 years, but he's resigned too. So basically her team is like freaking out. Everyone knows like, oh my goodness, this is not good. We're going to just scurry.
Because she went to court and she talked for 25 minutes and testified, and it went kind of viral. And now people are really seeing how abusive the whole relationship was. She has an IUD that she's not allowed to get taken out. So she has zero. And I even heard that during her Vegas residency, she was only paid $2,000 a week. Now I know that's a lot of money, but she made like 137 million, and she was paid six figures for the year only. So they're just like, it's this huge thing, but she finally was able to get her word out for 25 minutes. She spoke and it went viral, and people are talking about, there's a huge movement that's been here called Free Britney, because they just want her to have her life back. And the last update we gave you was just filling you all in on like, this is happening. And now it looks like it's getting better for Britney, but we don't really know. But here's where we are now.
Yes. So
sorry, I just took it right from you there.
I love that. That's so good. You got to give. Some people don't know, but it's really, really devastating what's happening to her. This woman has worked and been a workhorse, employing so many different people, and they're saying that she can't even make up her own decision if she wants to hire her own attorney or get an IUD taken out. That's cray to me. But back to the story and back to the details. So her team is resigning left and right. First off, we have her longtime manager, Larry Rudolph, who had been fired, I think, 2 separate times, and then he was with her for a very long time. And he wrote this letter that has since been published to the public, and this is what he had to say. It has been over 2.5 years since Britney and I last communicated, at which time she informed me she wanted to take an indefinite work hiatus. Earlier today, I became aware that Britney had been voicing her intention to officially retire. As you know, I have never been a part of the conservatorship nor its operations, so I am not privy to many of these details. I was originally hired at Britney's request to help manage and assist her with her career. And as her manager, I believe it's in Britney's best interest for me to resign from her team, as my professional services are no longer needed. Please accept this letter as my formal resignation. So I think he's scared, and he's like, I gotta get out of here. You know what I mean?
It's also him basically sticking up for her, because it's right. Like, look, because if people are resigning, it's just showing that like something big's about to happen.
100%. And then next on the list, we have Britney's lawyer, Sam Ingham, and he has asked to step down from the court-appointed role. So again, she never hired him. There was this other lawyer back in 2008 that she really, really wanted, but the court said, no, we have to appoint you one. You can't make your own decisions because you're in a conservatorship. So the lawyer, Sam Ingham, he filed papers to withdraw after the singer said at the court hearing that she wanted new counsel to represent her and get her out of the conservatorship that governs her life. And right now, you mentioned the internet's going wild. I mean, there are so many different viral things. There's the Free Britney movement. And right now, what is trending, it's called Let Britney Choose. And basically that means that they want to be able for Britney to choose her own lawyer. And she's going to be making a remote appearance at an upcoming court hearing to testify why she should appoint her new counsel. And the other thing that's wild is a lot of stars are coming out to speak out about this right now. There's Miley Cyrus, who was just like chanting at her concert, "Free Britney, free Britney, free Britney." Paris Hilton on her podcast was mentioning how she had heard Britney's testimony originally. And in the testimony, I don't know if you heard this, but she mentioned, when I first heard Paris Hilton's story, I didn't believe it, and basically what's crazy is Paris Hilton, if you haven't heard about her story, she had a lot of childhood trauma she endured, and she talks all about it in a documentary. I think it's called This Is Paris. But Britney Spears is basically just saying that no one's going to believe me because I'm Britney Spears, just like I don't believe Paris because she's Paris Hilton. And so Paris was just really giving her love for Britney. And apparently there is this group According to Mirror, it's Mariah Carey, Miley Cyrus, Katy Perry, and Christina Aguilera, and they're reportedly launching a legal fund to fight for Britney to free her from the conservatorship.
Those are like the OGs.
I know. So I literally have chills up my body right now. So everyone is watching. Everyone is sick of this. Like, it's time to be done, baby. Like, she needs her life back. She deserves it. So I literally have chills all up and down.
That is cool. Yeah.
I know.
So we're going to keep you posted. I know that Alyssa's just like the biggest Britney fan, and
I love Britney.
you know, by proximity, so am I. I do enjoy Britney, but I find this to be a fascinating story just because of the law and how things work.
Of course.
You know, that's the most powerful thing in this country, and sometimes the law can work for you or against you in a powerful way. And so I'm really interested, especially when people are being corrupted. We don't really know about her dad, but it doesn't sound
pretty.
Like it, yeah. So it's just nice when people get the justice they deserve, and so I'm really rooting for her.
Last thing to me as well, I'll say on this, if you think about it, Britney is paying for her father's attorneys to fight against her. She's paying for those attorneys.
Yeah.
That is so messed up. It's so messed up. So sending all the good juju to Britney, free Britney, let Britney choose. I mean, let this woman get her life back, you know? She deserves it.
Yeah, it's going to be
really
so.
does.
We'll keep you posted on everything like that. We'll keep you posted on our show Exploring Florida.
Yes.
It looks like the sun's going to start coming back out by the end of the week, so we'll get back on it.
The
but
sun
we're
will
really
come out.
hoping tomorrow
Yeah.
to have our first episode of Exploring Florida out sometime in August. We got Alyssa's birthday coming, so we're going to try to do some fun things there as well. So we just want to thank you for coming on this journey with us. And until next week, we will see you next Wednesday with another episode of the Freddie Alyssa Show. So thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.